20 years ago, a man and his wife looked across a gorse-covered cliff near La Mona and saw a deserted cottage. That first sight changed their lives. They gave up everything to come here and carve a flower farm and a home from the wilderness. They are Derek and Jeannie Tangye.
Well, we are two of the lucky people who were able to escape from it all when we had time left to enjoy it to the full. We were living in London. I had been in MI5, and I was also a newspaper columnist, and I'd written 2 or 3 books, including one on the British Commonwealth. And Jeannie was publicity manager of the Savoy Hotel Group. But somehow or other, we came to the conclusion that we weren't really getting anywhere, and we would like to change. And we were lucky enough both to feel the same. And one day we were on holiday down here, and we saw a cottage, which was empty. It was this cottage, which was derelict, with no piped water, no electricity. Might have put off a lot of women, but it didn't, as far as Jeannie was concerned. Despite the fact we found the most terrible problems. I mean, we've had disasters on disasters. We started off by growing a lot of potatoes, and they were all great, great failure. And we had sometimes we had no money in the house at all. But anyhow, we have found something here by living here, which is so special, so far above anything we ever had in London, however sophisticated and exciting our London life has been. I'm not saying we didn't enjoy it, because we did, but as I say, it didn't seem to be leading us anywhere. And we have found here that one of the great secrets of contentment is to live life slowly and amble through the day. We walk sometimes at Porthgwarra, which is the toe of Cornwall. It's very wild and unspoilt there, a lonely place where you can see things in perspective. Some of our harder decisions have been made here. When Jeannie was asked to go to London, for instance, to handle publicity for Charlie Chaplin's Countess of Hong Kong, it was here where we decided to say no. I've never thought of myself as a professional author. I write, well, when I feel I've got something to say. For years I didn't feel this. Then it suddenly turned, and I wrote about our life here. And all that I've written since has been a sort of chronicle of our life. It is a mirror of what a lot of people would like to do, I think, to break away from that great god efficiency. We aren't completely free, because one effect of the books has been to renew the links with the sort of world we left. I mean, of publishers and magazine articles and television. And in a sense, we walk a tightrope between living the life we want undisturbed and sacrificing our privacy because we've shared our lives in print with so many people. Half our life is spent with our hands in the soil. We have 14 acres of land, and in the spring we grow daffodils and tomatoes in the summer. About 3,000 plants in 5 heated greenhouses, and we try to produce about 6 or 7 tons of tomatoes a year. We have a staff of one, Geoffrey, and he belongs to one of the very oldest Cornish families in the whole of the West Cornwall.
Well, I work with the daffodils and the tomatoes, and of course I run the house as well and make my own bread. And when I have time, I draw and paint and write occasionally. When we first came to Minack, of course we had absolutely nothing, no water, no electricity. We had an old stove with a fire one side and an oven the other, and a primer stove, which we really became rather fond of. Of course, I hadn't ever cooked, as I'd never had to, and so I was really thrown in the deep end. And the worst thing was, because we used to get water from the stream, and it was full of tadpoles, and of course I hated, you know, trying to boil a tadpole, so one was always fishing out tadpoles for hours before one boiled the water.
Tomatoes are governed by regulations about grades. The top grade must have, and I quote, a maximum transverse diameter of 77 millimeters and above, but less than 87 millimeters. Well, there's no law to stop them tasting of soap. And we rebel against these grades and put all our tomatoes, even grade 1 size, into grade 2,
and have a special label printed, tomatoes grown for flavour.
I shop once a week on a Friday because cars usually going in with daffodils or tomatoes, but I only go to the little shops in Penzance. I like the old shops and people who know you and say good morning and got everything that you like for you. And I'm always in a hurry, and everybody sort of knows I dash in and out, and I, have lots of friends in the shopkeepers and talk to them.
Good morning, Mrs. Tangye. How's Mr. Tangye?
Very well, very well. Trying to get on with his book.
Can maybe expect it this year?
Oh, no, he's got to finish it by the autumn.
Oh, well, what will that be? Another birthday present?
Yes, I think it will. Just in time, I think.
Lovely.
Morning, Mrs. Salton.
Morning, Mrs. Tangye. And how are you today?
Very well, thank you. Lovely weather.
Beautiful, isn't it?
Yes, fine.
Yes. How can we help you today?
I have to find my list. I think I've got a prescription too, haven't
You
I?
have, yes. Well, I think I'll get a young lady to help you, and I'll get your prescription.
Yes.
Hi, Fred.
Good morning, Mr. Tangye. Good morning, Mrs. Tangye.
Well, we got about 20 or 30 of them today.
Yes, that's all right. We can take them, of course, and any more you've got.
And you like the grading?
Yes, I do, very much. Quite good. I think Mrs. Tangye is very good at grading
Thank you, Fred.
tomatoes.
Thank you, Fred. I do all the work, as you know.
Yes, I know you do.
I'd like to think our cottage without telephone is a sort of chastity belt. You see, nobody can get hold of us. We usually go to the Queen's Hotel, where Billy the porter, who's known Jeannie all her life, gives any messages that have been phoned in for us. Most people say, of course, that they couldn't live without a telephone, but we seem to manage perfectly well.
Plaice, lemon soles, megrims, Dover sole, brill, haddock, hake, John Dory's, cod, bass and mullet.
Is it a good week for fish?
No, not very good. There's never enough supply these days. There's more people than there is fish.
Hello, Mrs. Tangye, how are you?
Hello, Leslie. I was going to warn you, it's Fred's birthday this week, as you know.
This week?
Yes.
Okay.
Will you do the ice creams?
Very good. I will
Being
make a
his great
special
friend.
effort and try and get them. That'll be on Wednesday afternoon.
That'll be
Yes.
Wednesday afternoon, Leslie.
What time would you suggest, Mrs. Tangye?
About 2:30, I think,
About
Leslie, if you
2:30.
can arrange that.
Very good. I'll try and make that.
We began at Minack with a little money and a lot of enthusiasm. And of course, the great advantage of enthusiasm is that it deceives so pleasantly. I mean, it deceived us into thinking we could become millionaires from market gardening. I had an inspiration to sell our daffodil bulbs in packs to holidaymakers as souvenirs from Cornwall, and we went to a firm who helped to design a splendid plastic bag. I meant to try it on a modest scale of a few hundred, but a silver-tongued salesman persuaded me that they would sell so well that we should certainly need at least 25,000 of them. Well, we still have 24,000 of them left. Starting a market garden here was sheer back-breaking slog, clearing 6 acres of tiny steep meadows from the undergrowth overlooking the sea. And we had to plant potatoes by hand and dig and carry sometimes a ton a day up the cliff. Then we'd pack them and weigh them and send them off to Glasgow or Bristol or London, wherever rumours said prices were high for Cornish new potatoes. And our first good year we showed a profit of £200. We took on 2 more acres and tackled them with a second-hand rotavator. It overturned one day and ran from a foot. And I was hobbling about in time to see every green thing that season on my land turn to a black, putrefying slime. We had some terrible icy March gales. Professionals advise spraying pre-emergent weed killers. But we don't like to do this. We prefer to let the wildflowers and grass grow naturally and so fertilize the soil as they decay. We've given up potatoes and turned these meadows over to daffodils.
Ever since I can remember, I've always wanted a donkey, always. And one day we went to a pub, and there in the field behind the pub was a most melancholy-looking donkey, very, very sad. And an hour later, we drove off in the Land Rover with this donkey in it, which Derek had bought for me. And 3 weeks later, she had a foal. And I said, well, if it's a male, it'll have to be Fred. And of course, it was a male. So he was Fred, so we had Penny and Fred. And their greatest joy, of course, is for us to take them on what we call a donkey walk, which is along the coast to practically into Lamorna.
The donkey walk is a path we've cleared and signposted. There should by law be a coastal path around England, but there isn't, partly because some people armed with very old maps and demanding access have had a head-on collision with farmers. It would be much better if they went to the farmers and said, look, we want to have a path through your land, where can we have it? And then they could plan a path round the field rather than through growing crops. Walkers on our land are usually people who love solitude and following a track the badgers use. You're surrounded with the smell of damp earth, the scent of gorse and may, the sea. And you have a feeling of the timelessness of a part of England free from any sign of man's mania for organization. The donkeys look on the walk as a cafeteria, on the trot. We have to watch them closely, because given half a chance, they'd be off to the pub in Lamorna. They once had potato chips there, and the memory of it lingers still.
They're not hard to look after. They need lots of love. They're the most affectionate creatures. The only thing that you have to do is watch their feet, which turn up if you don't have them shod, which ours aren't. And you have to have the blacksmith down, and we get Kenny from St. Berrien, who comes down about every 2 months and does them beautifully.
We had a party for Fred's first birthday, and all the children from St. Berrien came. And every few years we have another. The week before, the children make him cards and banners.
Happy birthday for Fred. Now, come on. There you are. There's your cake.
We do it right.
Yes, Fred. Come on.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Fred. Happy birthday to you.
That was lovely.
Oh. That was a big one, wasn't it? Yeah, a big one. Oh, that was a big one.
One of these three, I think.
One of these three.
It's very easy to imagine that if you change your way of life, you can escape from it all and escape from yourself. You can't. We have learnt that what you gain is an awareness that values, true values, have never changed. And the deepest pleasure is in very simple things.
That's the ball again.
I've always imagined time rather like a plane, where if the associations are right, past and present can touch, and you can see yourself again, as you were years ago. Fred's party, with 80 guests, and Mr. Mellor providing the music, is our biggest social event this year at the Minack. We broke away from the very social world because we needed to put down roots. Those roots are here in Cornwall, where I was a child. For me, in a sense, it's meant coming home.
I wrote about Fred's first birthday party, and I remember a small girl coming soon afterwards and saying, I wish I'd given him a present, but there have been so many people coming, and they come from all over the world, and often they will ask me whether they could possibly do the same sort of thing as Jeannie and I have done. And, of course, one has to be sometimes pretty harsh, because it's perfectly obvious that the sort of life they would like to have would require much more comfort than they could possibly afford, because we were lucky to choose the right time to come, when it was much more inexpensive, much more easy to get land, perhaps, although in our case we only rent it. But as far as people who might want to do it now in the future, well, I think personally they ought to be very self-sufficient. They almost ought to take a survival course on how to be plumbers and bricklayers and flower farmers and everything possible. And even then, they would have to be prepared to live the same kind of life as the old crofter who used to live in this cottage 200 years ago. As far as we are ourselves concerned, I said to Jeannie the other day, now, supposing we had a very bad harvest 2 or 3 years in succession, and we might well do, we don't know about anything if it ever happens to us, we have such surprises. And I said to her, now look, what would you do? Would you say to yourself, look, we'll have to go back to London? Would you say to yourself, look, are you prepared to live like that crofter 200 years ago? And she said without any hesitation, and I must say I supported her, we would stay here, and we'd be very, very happy.